History Secrets.
There is a very popular narrative about the economic history of the United States. It is often summarized in a phrase known all over the world: the American dream. According to this narrative, anyone could start from nothing, work hard, be creative, and eventually build a massive fortune. For decades, stories of great entrepreneurs were used as examples of this ideal. Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller. These names became symbols of American economic rise. Vanderbilt built a vast railroad empire. Carnegie dominated the steel industry. Rockefeller turned oil into one of the largest fortunes in history. But the emergence of these economic giants also raises an interesting question. How did individuals manage to control entire sectors of the economy? Entire industries? Railroads, steel, oil, finance. The answer involves several historical factors: accelerated industrialization, emerging technologies, rapidly expanding markets, and increasingly complex financial structures. During the late 19th century, the United States went through a period known as the Age of Monopolies, or the Gilded Age. During this time, large industrial conglomerates began to dominate entire markets. Companies absorbed competitors, formed trusts, and established enormous economic influence. At the same time, the financial system was also transforming. Major bankers like J.P. Morgan played a central role in organizing capital and stabilizing markets. This process would eventually lead to the creation of important financial institutions, among them the Federal Reserve System in the early 20th century. Another decisive moment occurred after World War II. In 1944, international leaders gathered to create a new global monetary system. This system became known as Bretton Woods. It established that the US dollar would be the main international reserve currency, and that the dollar would be tied to gold. For a few decades, this arrangement helped stabilize the global financial system. But in 1971, President Richard Nixon announced the end of the dollar's convertibility into gold. The international monetary system then shifted to operate with pure fiat currencies. In this new system, the value of money came to depend mainly on trust in issuing governments and economic stability. At the same time, another element reinforced the global role of the dollar: international oil trade. A large portion of energy transactions began to be conducted in dollars. This arrangement became known as the petrodollar system. These mechanisms helped consolidate the central role of the United States in the global economy during the 20th century. But they also generated debates about the concentration of economic power. Large corporations, global financial institutions, and emerging technological networks began to exert increasing influence. In the late 20th and early 21st century, a new generation of economic giants emerged. Technology companies, digital platforms, social networks, search engines. Some of them grew from technologies originally developed in academic or government contexts. This phenomenon fueled new discussions about the role of technological innovation. To what extent technological advances come from private initiatives, and to what extent they depend on research funded by governments or public institutions. The history of the Internet illustrates this dynamic well. The initial infrastructure of the network was developed from research projects funded by the United States government. Later, private companies transformed this technology into global platforms. This type of interaction between the state, science, and the market has been common at various moments in economic history. Many technological advances emerged from public research programs, then were adapted for commercial applications. Over time, these transformations have profoundly shaped the global economy. New industrial sectors, new forms of communication, new structures of economic power. But they also raised important questions. Who controls fundamental technologies? Who defines the rules of the financial system? And how to balance innovation with a fair distribution of opportunities? These questions remain at the center of the debate about the future of the global economy. As new technologies emerge and financial systems evolve, the relationship between economic power and political power remains one of the most complex themes in modern history. Perhaps the true lesson of this story is that economic systems are never static. They evolve, they adapt, and sometimes undergo profound transformations. And each of these transformations reshapes once again the question that follows all modern societies: who really controls economic power? As we observe the development of the modern economy, we notice that major cycles of growth are often followed by periods of crisis. This pattern has repeated itself many times over the last 2 centuries. Rapid economic expansions, financial bubbles, and then collapses that redefine the system. One of the most striking examples occurred in 1929. The crash of the New York Stock Exchange triggered one of the largest economic crises in history. Millions of people lost their jobs. Banks failed. Companies disappeared. This event became known as the Great Depression. Crises of this kind often expose structural weaknesses in the economic system: concentration of wealth, excessive debt, highly speculative markets. After World War II, the world tried to create mechanisms to prevent similar crises. International institutions were founded: the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the Bretton Woods system itself. These structures aim to bring greater stability to the global financial system. For a few decades, this model contributed to a period of relatively stable economic growth. But over time, new pressures emerged: accelerated globalization, expansion of credit, international financial integration. These transformations increased the complexity of the economic system. Financial markets became increasingly interconnected. Crises that were once regional began to have global impact. The financial crisis of 2008 was a clear example of this new reality. Problems in the American housing market quickly spread through banks and financial institutions around the world. Governments had to intervene to prevent even greater collapses. These episodes reinforce a central characteristic of the modern economic system. It depends deeply on trust. Trust in institutions, trust in currencies, trust in markets. When this trust is shaken, chain reactions can occur. Investors withdraw capital. Banks restrict credit. Companies reduce investments. The result can be a generalized economic slowdown. But crises also tend to generate structural changes. After the Great Depression, new financial regulations emerged. After the 2008 crisis, central banks began adopting more aggressive monetary policies. And today, new discussions are underway about the future of the economic system. Among the most debated topics are technological transformations, digital currencies, artificial intelligence, automation. These innovations can profoundly change how wealth is created and distributed. Technology companies have become some of the most influential institutions on the planet. They control platforms used by billions of people, manage flows of information, and accumulate massive amounts of data. This new scenario raises important questions about economic governance: how to balance innovation with fair competition, how to avoid excessive concentration of power, how to ensure that technological benefits are widely distributed. Governments around the world are trying to respond to these questions. Some advocate for greater regulation of large technology platforms. Others argue that innovation should occur with minimal intervention. Reality will likely require some kind of balance. Technology will continue to advance. Markets will continue to evolve. And institutions will need to adapt to new conditions. If there is one constant in economic history, it is that no system remains exactly the same for long. Currencies change. Institutions change. Centers of economic power shift. Over the centuries, the world has witnessed the rise of various economic powers: Mediterranean trading empires, European maritime nations, industrial revolutions, and more recently, digital globalization. Each period brought new challenges, but also new opportunities. New models of economic organization emerged, and societies adapted to them. Perhaps the present moment is just another chapter in this long history of transformation, a period in which emerging technologies, geopolitical changes, and new economic models are reshaping the map of global power. The final outcome is still uncertain, but one thing seems clear: the economy of the future will likely be very different from the one we know today. And as has always happened throughout history, those who better understand these changes will have a greater ability to navigate this new scenario. Because in the end, economic systems are reflections of the societies that create them, and societies are always in motion. The history of humanity is a journey, filled with discoveries, enigmas, and mysteries. Some have been understood, others still challenge our understanding. And it is precisely in these mysteries that we find the most fascinating questions. Subscribe to the channel and continue exploring the secrets of history. Because some secrets of history are still waiting to be revealed.